Welcome to this explainer. It's actually kind of fascinating when you think about it. We spend so much time agonizing over our trading algorithms, we refine endless lines of code, and we completely obsess over perfecting our technical edge. But then, we spend almost zero time on our own biological hardware. Today, we're exploring a massive, shared blind spot in high-stakes environments. It's the absolutely critical, yet completely overlooked relationship between our physical bodies and our mental performance. You've likely spent years developing your mental edge, right? The psychology, the frameworks, the rules, that deep self-knowledge. But how often do you actually think about the physical machinery that executes those decisions? Today, we're going to look at the body not as some weekend lifestyle project, but as the literal, physical hardware your mind runs on.
Think about it like this. Imagine spending years writing the most sophisticated software imaginable. You've optimized every single line of code, you've ensured the logic is totally flawless, and then you choose to run it on a broken, dusty old machine that literally crashes every single afternoon. That is exactly what a high performer does when they neglect their body while developing their mind. Your nervous system processes every single decision you make. Your brain either executes every rule you've set or it breaks them. The physiology of your body either supports the absolute highest quality of judgment available to you, or it systematically undermines it. And there you are, sitting there wondering why your mind isn't performing the way your philosophy says it should.
All right, Section 1, the biology of poor decisions, when physiology overrides philosophy.
Okay, let's dive into this. We need to transition away from metaphors and look at the literal, hard science of why perfectly planned rules just suddenly fail under pressure. Why do we abandon our meticulously crafted plans in the heat of the moment? Well, the answer isn't a lack of willpower, it's biology. It all comes down to the prefrontal cortex. See, your brain is a physical organ, and quite frankly, it's a demanding, 3-pound energy hog that casually consumes 20% of your body's entire energy supply. It relies completely on oxygen, glucose, hydration, and a very specific set of neurochemicals to work. And your prefrontal cortex, which is the exact region responsible for impulse control, rule following, and rational decision-making, is incredibly vulnerable to cortisol, the stress hormone. When you haven't slept, when you're chronically stressed, or when you haven't eaten well, your body just pumps out cortisol. And when that happens, the prefrontal cortex essentially dims the lights and hands control right over to the amygdala, the emotional, highly reactive center of the brain.
So the crucial point here is this silent, internal battle taking place in your head. Your trading philosophy, your rules, that sophisticated software you built, it says, pause before acting, assess the risk. But your physiology, flooded with stress and depleted of energy, it's screaming. Cortisol is high, glucose is low, the prefrontal cortex is offline, acts now. And when these two forces clash, physiology wins. It literally always wins. Why? Because it operates far below the level where your philosophy or your willpower can even intervene. You're basically asking your rational brain to govern your emotional brain under conditions that biologically favor the emotional brain. It's a losing battle.
Moving right along to Section 2, Stoic Physical Discipline, the ancient blueprints for execution.
When we think of the Stoics, we usually picture purely mental exercises, right? Guys sitting around deep in thought. But they definitely weren't ascetics who believed the body was the enemy of the mind. Actually, quite the opposite. We can completely reframe ancient Stoicism for the modern high performer by understanding that these philosophers didn't train their bodies for vanity. No, they trained for operational execution and mental fortitude. Take Epictetus, for example. What makes his perspective so incredibly powerful is that he was physically disabled, lamed during his time as a slave, yet he wrote about the body with unbelievable clarity. He didn't worship it, for sure, but he certainly didn't ignore it either. He perfectly understood the body as an instrument. It's a tool that has to be maintained with the minimum requirements needed to serve its purpose. And that purpose is to carry the mind through the world without becoming a physical distraction from the mind's higher work. And this brilliantly illustrates a mindset perfectly embodied by Seneca's famous practice to endure and abstain. Now, he didn't do this as some weird form of punishment. It was a daily practice to prove to himself that the body does not govern the will governs the body. This connects directly to Marcus Aurelius, who intuitively understood what modern neuroscience is just confirming for us today. Physical challenge trains the exact same psychological muscles required at the trading terminal. Seriously, pushing through the physical discomfort of that last workout repetition builds the exact same delayed gratification and rule adherence you need when your emotional system is screaming at you to abandon your trading strategy.
Which brings us to Section 3, Infrastructure for Peak Performance, treating the body as a performance variable.
Okay, we're transitioning to hard operational requirements now. Listen, these are not soft lifestyle wellness tips. This is absolute, non-negotiable performance architecture. If you want the edge, this is exactly how you build the machine to handle it. There are 4 essential pillars of physical infrastructure here. First up is sleep, at a strict 7 to 9 hours. Look, if you treat sleep as optional, you're treating your prefrontal cortex function as optional, which means you are treating your rule adherence as optional. It is the absolute foundational requirement that keeps the rational brain online. Then, we have pre-session movement, stable glucose nutrition, and a voluntary physical stress protocol. Let's break these next 3 down, because the science here is just incredibly compelling.
So research by John Rady reveals something pretty incredible. Just 20 to 30 minutes of moderate physical activity changes your brain chemistry for up to 4 hours. 4 hours. BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, spikes to aid plasticity. Dopamine starts flowing for focus and motivation. Serotonin kicks in for emotional regulation, and norepinephrine drastically sharpens your alertness. Think about it. These are exactly the neurochemicals required for focused attention and risk management. Doing 20 minutes of movement before your session is not just exercise, it is neurological preparation. It's really as non-negotiable as your pre-market chart review.
Our third pillar is nutrition. Your brain runs on glucose. If you feed it unstable sources, like high sugar, processed foods, you get a rapid spike, naturally followed by a huge, sudden drop. And we all know that unannounced 2 p.m. mid-session brain fog, right? That cognitive crash arrives right in the middle of trading without any warning whatsoever. The prefrontal cortex dims, and your impulse control just evaporates. But if you maintain stable blood glucose through consistent, protein-rich fuel, it acts as a highly reliable power supply for your brain. It totally prevents those sudden, unexplainable moments where your discipline mysteriously degrades mid-trade.
The fourth pillar is the voluntary physical stress protocol. Basically, this means engaging in exercise that is genuinely hard and uncomfortable. Why? Because it serves as a direct inoculation against the stress response produced by volatile markets. By physically training your body to produce cortisol and then recover from it, you're actually training your nervous system's recovery profile. Practically speaking, this means after a brutal, unexpected losing trade, a physically trained person will return to their emotional and rational baseline significantly faster than someone who is sedentary. You are literally training your stress recovery in real time. Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4. Your early warning system, reading the physical indicators of state.
So this is really all about taking all of this biological data and using it in real time to recognize red flags before a bad decision is ever executed. Your body always knows before your mind is willing to admit it. Noticeable tightness in the jaw, shallow breathing, an elevated heart rate right before an entry, or maybe a very specific restless anxiety that definitely isn't excitement but fear. Guys, this is your check engine light. These signals arrive before the bad trade happens. They are alerting you that your hardware is operating way outside of its optimal parameters. Learning to read these physical sensations is honestly the cheapest, most effective risk management available to you.
I want to leave you with 2 crucial questions to really reflect on today. First, on your absolute best days, the days when your execution was flawlessly clean, your rules held up perfectly, and your mind was razor sharp, what was your exact physical state? Had you slept a full 8 hours the night before? Did you move your body before sitting down at the desk? Did you eat a stable, protein-rich meal? I want you to think deeply about your biological baseline during your absolute peak performance.
Now let's think about the reverse. On your worst days, the days when your decisions were highly reactive, when your discipline completely broke down, and your account paid a heavy price, what was your physical state then? I strongly urge you to actually write the answers to these 2 questions down, right side by side. The correlation between your physical state and your mental performance is not subtle, it is absolute. Your physical state is quite literally your most controllable performance variable. So you have to ask yourself, if your body is the ultimate trading algorithm, what is your current maintenance routine actually costing your portfolio? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer.